Okay. Hello, everyone. Feel free to move to get some food. But in conscious of the time, we're going to start our workshop. And as many of you know, this is part of our foundational workshop series. And today is a very exciting one, Ace the Interview, Strategies for PhD and Postdoc. And this workshop series is brought to you by the Center for Career Engagement in collaboration with DBBS and the Graduate Center. If you have not checked in, please check in using the QR code paper that we passed to you. Before we start our workshop, I want to ask, raise your hand if you are in the job market and you are looking for jobs and you may have some interview very soon.
Thank you.
Okay, great. This is what I really hope to have is we want to engage students as early as possible, because as you can see, when you need to find a job, you need to have an interview. That is usually a few hours or a few days most. And you probably have a very concentrated time to do the preparation. That is a pre-interview. And then you have post-interview. But the interview preparation should not only happen the few days before the interview, it's actually happening right now. You need to take a longer time to do the interview preparation. And another perspective I really want to share with each one of you here is we kind of showed you this pie chart before, pie theory, PIE, performance, image, and exposure. This is some study that has been done, and they have published paper on it, is to see what contributes to the success of your career progression or career success. And performance, which is really important, is the foundation, contributes only 10% of your career success. And the image is what reputation you have, like how other people feel about you, think about you, contributes to 30%. And exposure is how big your network is, how many people know about you, contributes to another 60%. So even though today, we're going to talk a lot about formal job interview, but many of the techniques and concepts should be applied to any daily interaction. Your meeting with your PI, your meeting with your collaborators, with your peers, or with any people you meet in the, like from the employer side or from any place. So every interaction, you can consider that as a kind of informal interview, because who knows, that person may hire you in future, or they may not hire you because of some bad interaction. You may find people who want to collaborate with you or who will not want to collaborate with you. So that's what we really want to design this workshop is about. Is of course, we're going to talk about job interview, but I hope like a lot of concepts, methods you can apply to your daily interaction. So with that, I want to ask you a first question. When you think of the interview topic, what do you want to learn about interviewing? And I want to have like a popcorn style, just share what you want to learn. And later we're going to talk more what we plan to talk. And your sharing can help us to prioritize.
Concise.
How to be concise. Yes. Great one.
Energy, enthusiasm,
Yeah. Balance. That's an art. Yeah. What else? Can we be honest? We'll definitely talk about that. Great question. Confidence. Very important. Yeah. What else? Okay, that's great. I think that is also great. Some of you come with some questions. Some of you are just feeling very open and curious to kind of absorb whatever we want to teach you. So I think with that, Kyle is going to kick off the presentation, and we too are going to co-present and share what we feel is very important for you to know about this topic.
All right. So good to see you all. We've done our little welcome here. So the agenda for today, we're going to start by talking about the types of interviews. We're going to give the overview of the different sorts of interviews that you most commonly might expect as PhDs and postdocs. We're going to spend a good chunk of time on the actual preparation part, how to set yourself up, what kinds of things you need to do in order to feel ready for it. And then we will spend some time talking about what it's like, what to be focused on during the interview, what to do after the interview, And then at the end, we'll have some Q&A and next steps. But if at any point you need us to repeat something or you have a clarifying question, please feel free to raise your hand and let us know. All right. And if you haven't had a chance, please also feel free to grab food. DBBS is our co-sponsor for this event, and they were very kind enough to provide us some snacks for today.
Sure. The success of this job only us. It also depends on you. So I want each one of you kind of stay engaged, share your opinion, ask questions, and let us all make the best out of it. After all, we spent 1.5 hours.
Yep. All right. So let's talk about interview types and formats just to start with, so we're all on the same page. This is a broad general list of the types of interviews that you are most likely to experience whenever you decide to go on the job market. Very commonly, you will have some kind of screening interview, especially if you're applying to a big company. And that is usually by phone or by Zoom, and it's the first filter. They've seen your resume, they've seen your cover letter. More often than not, they want to verify your qualifications. So this one is relatively straightforward in most cases. It's just making sure that you are qualified for the position, that you are who you say you are, and that you understand what the position is about. So this one can be relatively brief. It may not always be with the person who is like you're going to be working with. Oftentimes it's with an HR person. Then there might be you might also have a hiring manager or search committee interview, also frequently these days by phone or Zoom if it's the first one or even the second one. And that's a chance for the actual hiring manager or the committee to get to know you a little bit more, to go kind of deeper into an exploration of your fit. There's also still lots of on-campus, on-site interviews these days. Most places, when they get to the final round of interviews, will want to bring you out to their physical location so that they can meet you, they can talk to you, they can kind of get a sense of your vibe a lot of the time. This is in the age of post-COVID. This has diminished a little bit, but not nearly as much as you might think. So still very, very common, comes with its own set of things you have to kind of pay attention to. And then in terms of other kind of interview types, the behavioral type of interview is one we'll talk a lot about because it's probably the most common type of interview. It's the one you're most likely to encounter. But we also want to touch on case and logic interviews because for those of you who might be interested at some point in going into more business, consulting, some of those kinds of careers, there is a decent chance that you will have to run across a different type of interview that you may not be familiar with. And so we want to hit on that too. So we'll start talking here about industry interviews. And by industry here, we mean companies, broadly speaking. We're talking about, biotech, tech, pharma, the places that are most likely to employ research scientists. So these are the places that many of you, I imagine, are thinking about going when you graduate. It's one of the more common routes for PhDs to take aside from academia. So this will usually span, anywhere between like 4 to 8 hours across a couple of days, and they might be split up. It's intense, but it's relatively predictable in structure. So you'll have your initial phone or video screening with the HR or the hiring manager, and it's very important that you pay attention to which one you get with this, because if you're interviewing with someone from HR, odds are they don't know half of the fancy words you know. And so you have to be very cognizant of your use of language and making sure that you are talking to them in a way that they will be able to understand your qualifications. There's frequently in industry interviews a technical assessment of some kind, and this might be something you have to do like under a timed circumstance, or it might be asynchronous, but it's frequently something like a coding or problem solving or field specific kind of tasks, something that demonstrates that they're able to assess your knowledge of the field. Sometimes you may be asked to give a research talk if you're applying as a research scientist. This might be a 45 to 50 minute research talk plus Q&A. This is very dependent on the industry, on the company itself, but it's something you should be prepared for. They won't make you do this like without telling you well ahead of time that they want you to do it. So they're not going to spring this upon you. There may be some kind of technical deep dive into your past work and methodology, very likely to be behavioral questions on teamwork, project management, and conflict. There may be a system design or whiteboard problems. You may also have discussion with potential team members, maybe even like take-home kind of assignments, basically like, here's something for you to work on, send it back to us, in a few days, and they use that as part of the assessment. Typically, these will end with very clear discussions of like next steps and timelines. So, what is the next thing you have to do? What if is there going to be another interview, another assessment, and when can you expect to hear back from us? So, relatively straightforward structure, but it's going to test you in terms of your knowledge of your field, of your area of research. So, you need to make sure that you are up to date, that you are, I guess, caught up with, your homework more or less. Behavioral interviews. These are, again, probably the most common, and they're very easy to spot behavioral interviews and questions because they almost always begin with someone saying like, tell me about a time when, or can you share an example, or can you tell me a story? And the logic here is that if they get a sense of how you've handled situations in the past, they can use that to predict your future behavior, right? So it's establishing credibility in what you say. And it gives an insight into problem-solving skills. This is an instance where stories are your best evidence. It's evidence, it's empiricism, right? You're all scientists, researchers. Like we want to give good evidence for the statements that we make. So stories are our best evidence in these. And it's really important to listen for what is kind of implicit. Like, what do you think they're getting at with the question? What kind of behavior do they want to understand about you? What are they trying to assess? And try to speak to that. Next, we have case interviews. Very, very common for consulting positions. So if any of you are thinking about going into consulting, you need to get very familiar with case interviewing. And this is, as it suggests, you go into the interview and they give you a case. It's some sort of problem that you have to then try to come up with a solution for. And it's not a problem in the sense of like a math problem set or anything like that. This is like a business problem. This is like something that might come up when you're dealing with a company and you're supposed to try to figure out how to provide some sort of solution for them. And unlike the technical interviews, they're not going to like give you this ahead of time so you can prepare for it. They're going to spring it on you right there. So you need to be familiar and ready to go with how the process that is like necessary to produce a good answer. And there is a process that goes into doing case interviewing. We have a free resource, access to a free resource through WashU called Management Consulted. It is a really, really great resource for practicing case interviews. We also have career coaches on our team who are consultants by trade and who are able to work with you on doing practice case interviews. And this is one where it's like, you got to do a lot of practice for this. So if you're thinking at all about consulting, get started preferably yesterday, but at the very least right now so that you can make sure that you are ready for what that situation looks like. It's a very intensive kind of thing. And then obviously there's the on-campus academic interview. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. So we won't belabor this right too much at the moment, but because there's a lot of information that I want to highlight with it. So any questions about types of interviews before we move into the actual preparation stage? Okay.
Involved interview is what I call the daily meetings.
Yeah.
Even though it's not kind of explicitly listed here, it's definitely.
In a lot of cases, yeah. Yeah. And for those of you who ever do any kind of teaching, educational science has established that you need about 15 to 16 seconds when you say, do you have a question, for people's brains to actually decide if they have a question or not. So if you're ever teaching, that's a good little counter for you there. And if it seems like I'm staring at you for a while, I'm giving you a chance to actually, your brain to figure out if it does have something it wants to ask. All right. So types of interviews, let's talk about the preparation for them. Preparation starts with research about the organization. You are all researchers of some kind or another. You're all PhD students or postdocs or what have you. Like, research should be something that is second nature to you, should be something that you're good at. And so these are some of the things that you should really know about the organization. You should know what their stated mission, culture, and values are. I would say, especially if it's a small organization, if you're interviewing at like a startup, and they have like 5 people, then they probably put a lot of effort into deciding what their mission and vision was as they're starting out. So this is a very important piece of information to know. You want to know, obviously, what services, products, degrees, whatnot are offered by the organization. And we put degrees here because this goes for like departments as well, right? If you're interviewing for an academic job, you need to know what degrees the department is giving out. Because if a department doesn't, for example, have a PhD program, then you don't want to be answering lots of questions about how you would train a PhD student. So you have to be knowledgeable about that. You want to know their kind of their position within the industry, their relative strength, and how they stack up against other companies. Like, who are kind of their competitors? Where are they in the landscape of whatever industry they're in? It's really helpful to know how the business is doing from a funding perspective. Like, what does their revenue look like? If they're a publicly traded company, that's a good thing to kind of check out. If it's a department, what does their enrollment look like? Has enrollment been going up or down? That could be an indication of the health of the department. You want to know divisions, subsidiaries, locations, and relative size, especially for larger international companies. If a company has multiple branches, like, where are they based out of, right? There are companies that are often based out of other countries. That affects how the company's work values, look, and what their practices are like. Names and background info about your interviewers. So try to track down, if they share with you who you're going to be interviewing with. Track down what you can. Look at staff profiles. Look at professors' profiles. Look at LinkedIn. Look at social media if you can find it. And if they don't tell you who's going to be interviewing you, ask who's going to be interviewing you. And then finally, the format for the interview. So are you going to be on like a panel of interviewees? Is it going to be you and one person? Is it going to be you and a bunch of people? What's the situation and what's the environment? So you're prepared for whatever comes up with that.
No. It is professional. It is okay to ask you.
Yep.
Can you provide gender?
Yep.
And similarly, I guess, this is for job interview type of preparation. If you just prepare for some meeting you're going to attend, you need to do similar research. It's not about some organization. Could be about some organization. It's more about like who is going to be in the meeting. What's their background? Why this meeting exists? What do they want to potentially ask? What type of questions do I have? All of those preparation process can be applied.
Yep. And make sure you're researching the whole organization. So don't just look at the department that you're interviewing with, look at the entire organization. If you're interviewing for an academic job, look at the school that it's located in, look at the college, look at the landscape of, where it is. And figure out kind of where you fit in. Try to get a sense of how your skills are mapping to their needs, to what it is that they're trying to produce. And tailor what you describe to those needs. Also show interest and enthusiasm, and build a common knowledge base. If you research the company and know things about them, then you demonstrate your interest in the role, you demonstrate your ability to understand what they want, and it builds rapport between you and them.
Share here. She was one. Yes, program. When I applied for English jobs or any jobs, I didn't do that much of research. Now, because I guess at that time nobody taught me that. Now thinking about it, I would say it is so helpful. It is so important to do this kind of research that can really help you to exceed in your interview. So that's why we really want to teach you this kind of concept.
It's also helpful to draft up responses, to practice a little bit. Try to anticipate what sorts of things that they might want to talk to you about, that they might ask about based off of the job description, based off of the company, and start thinking about how you might answer some of these kinds of questions. Try to reflect on your own experiences and gather up some stories, some illustrative stories from your past that show off your skills in different kinds of areas. So like we said, stories are the best kind of evidence. So you want to come in armed with some evidence. It's really helpful if you study your CV or resume and remind yourself, think back like, oh, what did I do in that lab? Some of this stuff might be like years ago, right? So it's helpful to reflect back, consider, what kinds of stuff you've done, what accomplishments you've made, and use that to inform how you might answer questions. And make sure you review your social media presence if you are active on any social media platforms, especially if they're public. Make sure that you're aware of what kinds of stuff you post, because it's always possible that they might ask about it. I think LinkedIn in particular, if you care about a particular cause on LinkedIn and you post a lot about it, they might ask about it. So.
A little comment here is I think somebody asked how to make sure our answers is concise during interview. And the draft written answers is really a great technique to try. And also I want to comment, study your submitted resume is so important. I had interviewed for at least two industry employers, and it's kind of like the interview with hiring manager. And what they asked is basically based on my resume. They asked my previous experience, but you do not know what type of experience they will be interested in. So it's very important for you to be familiar with your own experience. Some of them maybe a few years back. So try to understand, how you're going to describe your experience in a way that can resonate with the hiring manager or any interviewer.
All right, so let's talk about preparing for some very common questions or question types. You are almost always, oh, yeah. Yeah. In my opinion, you want to err a little bit more on the side of boastful when you're in an interview. To me, though, it is more about the tone. So when you are giving an answer in an interview, when they're asking about your past, about your experience, you are providing evidence. And so I think that you should approach it from the perspective of, I am just relating the truth. I am relating how I answered this question or how I handled this situation. I'm relating how I've used this skill. I'm relating, what I've done in this kind of area. And so you approach it from that place of like, this is just fact. This is just who I am and what I've done. And you let your tone reflect that. So you talk about it from a factual basis, and you don't necessarily need to put like value qualifications on it. You don't have to be like, well, look at all this kind of thing. You just, I think, very straightforward. You very straightforward say, here's what it is. And you let them make kind of the value judgment based off of that. So don't try to temper yourself. Don't try to like play down your accomplishments. Just tell them what it is. This is what I am. This is what I've done.
The difference between being you don't make a statement. For example, if I am being interviewed, I probably will highlight stress, very result oriented. I will confident say I'm result oriented, and then back with evidence. What do you mean by you are result oriented? what is evidence, and that can be simply quantified data or facts.
Yeah. And it's like if you've accomplished something, if you've published a paper or gotten a grant or gotten submitted a patent, it's like those are again, those are facts. Those are things that happened. And so you say like, I worked on X, Y, and Z project and we published on this and we got an award on this. And you state it very straightforward, I think. It's a great question. All right, so tell me about yourself. Almost always the opening question. This should be about a 30-second soundbite, roughly, that sets the stage for the conversation. And these are the things that we recommend including in your 30-second pitch. So give your educational background, whether it's most recently as a PhD, as a postdoc, MD, PhD, lead with credentials. Focus on relevance. What you talk about should be relevant to the specific position that you're applying for. So if you are applying to be a research scientist, it's not necessarily the time that you're going to spend talking about your advocacy work, for example. Lead with impact, not just tasks. So this is where it's like, tell them what was accomplished within the projects that you've worked on or the broad work that you've done. Not just like, oh, I've done a ton of experiments. It's like, oh no, I worked on this project that resulted in this outcome. Speak clearly and honestly. You want to be authentic with this. And provide like, occasional like natural pause points, like just a brief kind of moment that allows them to maybe interrupt with a follow-up question if they want to ask one. This is one, if there's something that you practice most in preparation for the interview, I would say it should be this. Because this is your opening, this is your first impression, and first impressions really do matter. So making sure that you are ready to go with it is really helpful. So, in preparation for that, our first activity, let's take about 5 minutes for you to start drafting your about me statement, okay? And I will go back to it so you have access to this slide to look at.
Yeah, this is a big previous workshops, they have done statement version. And if you have, had a brief idea about tell me about yourself, your introduction, then I want to challenge you how you can tailor it for different audience. How are you going to answer that question to an HR person versus to the hiring manager versus to your future potential colleague? And what are some of the things you really want them to know about you? And raise your hand if you have a question. We are happy to answer you.
Take a minute to wrap up your draft.
Yeah, you may think this is kind of a trivial exercise, but it is so important because knowing about yourself is really the basis for you to talk about others. You know what you want to talk about. That is so important. And it is also very important for your creative work. Only when you know about yourself, you know what type of job opportunity you want to pursue and how to, convince the employers to get that opportunity.
All right. So let's hit on one of the next common kinds of preparation points. So this also, I think, goes back to the question about like, how do you keep answers succinct? This is a method that I think works very well for that because it manages the stages of your response. And this is basically how you're going to answer at least 75% of behavioral questions. Like if they ask you about, for an example from your past, about a time you've done something, you're going to want to use the STAR method. And so the STAR method works like this. They ask you, tell me about a time. Okay. So first, you describe the situation. What was the context that you were in? What was the challenge or problem that you were dealing with or facing? Then the task. What was your specific responsibility? What were you asked to do in the situation? Then action. What did you do? What specific steps and decisions did you make? Actions did you take in addressing this problem? And then result. What was the outcome? How did this end up? Like what was the result of this situation that you've described? Very relatively simple, relatively straightforward tactic for this, but it works really, really well in helping you structure your responses and making sure that you don't get maybe too caught up or don't end up like wandering into other kinds of areas with an answer.
Yeah, I think maybe if you are in this framework, raise your hand if you prefer some of it.
Yep.
So you're great. The reason we want to use this kind of framework is because on the other side, the interviewer have a form. They are going to evaluate you on those points. Like what is the situation? Because behind the scene is there is an interview panel. They need to make sure the interview process is fair and everything. Every interview will take notes. If you can describe the situation clearly, it will help them to write down the notes and help them understand you, and they will give you a higher score. Does that make sense? And also, they probably will ask you quite a few different behavioral questions. So don't answer your questions like too long. Also, not too short. So about like 3 minutes, I would say, is a good kind of time range. This way, you can describe the things clearly enough, but also give opportunity to answer future questions.
And some of that requires practice too. And we're going to talk about resources at the end that can help you with that practice, because this is not something you're just automatically born knowing how to do. Yeah.
One more comment for this one is, you are probably going to be asked for quite a few different questions related to behavioral questions. And sometimes it's very hard to come up with one specific example. So our recommendation to you is maybe you can think of like 3 to 4 stories about yourself. And it's kind of like the stories you're very proud of and you're very familiar with. And no matter what type of the questions they're asking, you can reframe it a little bit. So you always talk about that story, that question, but you're going to answer it from a different angle. For example, if they ask about like how you resolve conflict, you can still use that story, maybe kind of talk a slightly different angle. So this way you don't have to think about the example on site. Yeah. Typical question is like how you resolve a conflict, how you manage it, timeline, how you learn new things like that. And again, nowadays with ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT to bring with you to see what are some of the potential behavioral questions they are going to ask me. And then you can prepare on top of that and find your classic 3 to 4 stories you can talk about.
And I can give kind of an example of this. Earlier on in my career, there was a story that I relied on a lot for a while. One of my very first like full-time jobs, I was working for a program that was serving STEM students. We were supposed to serve like a certain number of STEM students, but we were falling short. Like when I came in, they'd never met this goal of like the number that they were supposed to get. And so one of the first things I did coming in, I was like, okay, let's establish connections with all of the STEM academic advisors on campus and let them know about our program so that we can boost recruitment numbers. And next year, the next recruitment cycle, we like more than doubled. And that story is very useful across a variety of dimensions, right? If someone asked me how I solved a problem, well, okay, assessed like this was a problem we were having. Here's what I did. If someone asks me about my experience with like collaborating with other departments, well, I went out and, met a lot of these different academic advisors to build this partnership. Um, there's a variety of ways that I can work that question into different or that answer to different kinds of questions. So it might almost seem kind of like backwards to start with the answer, but it can actually be really helpful. I think I saw a hand a second ago. Did I? No, okay. Just making sure. All right. So next activity now. Oh, there is? Oh, yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Great question. Yeah. Great question. We will definitely talk about that. So for this activity, we want you to draft a response to the following question using the STAR method. Tell me about a time you made a mistake at work and how you handled it.
To make work be honest. This is tricky.
Yep.
Excellent.
Have we all got the question? Because I want to go back to the STAR method so you can refer back to that. Cool.
This is also a similar question. HR what is your weakness? You want to answer questions using theory.
So this is a dual purpose kind of activity. I chose this to let us practice not just STAR method, but also another kind of piece. And I'm playing a little bit of a game with you here, but we say that for behavioral questions, you want to try to understand what are the people getting at? What is the employer getting at when they ask a question? What do you think they're trying to get at when they ask about a mistake you've made?
Your mistake. Maybe provide a solution.
Can you take responsibility, right? Yeah, exactly. Can you take responsibility and can you fix it or at least work to address it? That's exactly right. This is one I've seen trip people up a lot um, in a couple of directions. Sometimes people take this too much at face value and they give me a mistake that is like kind of a weird one. Like, I don't know. I don't need to know about the time. I'm not asking about the time that you, I don't know, tripped and like broke a bunch of samples of something. Like that's just okay, that happened. But that doesn't indicate your ability, like your ability to take responsibility unless you then subsequently try to cover it up or something. Also, sometimes for some reason people give me responses to this where they describe a situation where they blame someone else for the mistake. You would think that you would know intuitively not to do that. But I've seen that too many times for it not to be like a pattern. This is about just being able to demonstrate responsibility on things. And so you want to think about that with a lot of these questions, these types of questions. Anything that asks you about a deficit, a weakness, a mistake, those are questions about your ability to self-reflect, to self-analyze, to take responsibility, and to improve. So, yeah.
Do you think even maybe even more important than responsibility could be like reasoning and like critical analysis and like how you then move forward? Like in some ways, like that might be even more important than like the mistake.
The move forward piece is the most important bit. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, like, how did you address it? And that's part of the taking responsibility because it shows that you are trying to then fix it. Yeah. So I think you're right.
Yeah. But the good thing here is you want say
Yeah.
you take responsibility, or you can highlight, you really take ownership of that. And you can also highlight what are some of the things you learned from this process. So depending on your job and your goal, you can highlight different things. But the principle here is you want to really turn this, what we call a negative thing, into a positive.
Yeah. Yes.
I guess we shouldn't like tell the weakness that is critical to that job title.
Yeah. I'm of the opinion that if they ask, what is your biggest weakness? You don't give them your biggest weakness. You give them your manageable weakness. The one that like is something you've had to deal with and is something you've had to overcome, but that you can actually address and work with. Yeah. Yeah. And that gets into the honesty kind of piece. How honest do we get in interviews? Every answer we give has to be honest. We never make up answers. But there is a threshold of honesty that we maybe don't want to cross over too far. And that takes feeling out a little bit. And believe me, you will mess it up at some point in an interview. And that sucks, but that's a learning experience. And you will grow from that and realize went too far there. Yeah. All right. This is a good one to prepare for. Do you have any questions for me? There's some do's and don'ts here. This is a chance for you to demonstrate your knowledge of the organization and industry and to show that you're already invested in the organization's goals and ask substantive questions about the team, about the role. What you don't want to do with this is be like, no, I'm good. That's never good. You always want to show curiosity. You also don't want to ask questions that are really only relevant after you have an offer. So like salary, benefits, time off, stuff like that. We'll deal with that later. That's not what we're talking about right now. And you also don't necessarily want to, how do I put this? The questions should be kind of focused on them, basically. It's sort of like if you imagine, this is maybe an odd sort of metaphor, but if you're on like a first date with someone, you want to ask questions that benefit and reflect on them, not like how will being in a relationship with you benefit me, right? That's just kind of icky and weird, and it runs the same sort of way for interviews. Again, maybe an odd metaphor, but anything you want to.
Yeah. You have a question mind. First thing you need to do is check online. See what you find by yourself.
Yeah.
If you can find it by yourself, don't ask. Save this precious time for something that is more important, more insightful,
Yeah.
that can really help you to gain more information, evaluate this opportunity, and also maybe gain more favor than employer.
One of my favorite questions, for example, I almost always ask this in interviews. I ask, what is your favorite part about working here? There's no universe where you can Google that for an individual person, and it gives you insight into the company culture. I also like to ask people, the supervisors, what their leadership style and philosophy is like. Again, very rare that you're going to get stuff like that. So try to be, those kind of deeper questions in there.
He did ask me that.
I did.
Some of the questions. How was this position? You or the team has an expansion? What is a hiring timeline is going to be look like after this one? Those are some of the questions you can always, and usually they don't leave you too much time.
No.
It's just 5 to 10 minutes. So a couple of questions should be efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. You can have like a list and you can kind of prioritize it, but like you're not going to get to more than a couple in the first one. Yeah. 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 That's the most common question, honestly. That's the usually one that you round off with, like, I guess I'm just curious what the next steps are. And that's a good one because it shows your continued interest in the position. Yes. Some helpful tools here. We have access to a platform called Big Interview. This is a platform that has sample questions for a huge range of different kinds of fields and jobs. And so you can review potential questions. They provide guidance on how to answer them, like tips on good answers. You can even practice. You can do like a practice answer that it will record and then provide kind of like an automatic sort of analysis for you, which like don't take that totally seriously because there's not a human being doing the analysis, but it can be helpful. So this is a great tool. And then career coaches. Every career community in CCE does interview prep and practice. So we'll do mock interviews. We'll help you brainstorm answers to questions. We'll help you with like if there's other things that make you nervous about the interview process. So really utilize these resources in this preparation process.
Earlier this week, one student had a one-to-one information interview. It's not a job interview. It's just a one-to-one interaction type of interview. She also had a coaching appointment with me to discuss strategy questions to ask, things like that. So really leverage the resources here. So
real quick, rounding this off, we want to talk about on-campus interviews because these are their own kind of thing, right? An academic on-campus interview is going to be a minimum of 1 full day, usually more like 2 days, sometimes even 3. And this is the elements that you can expect to come up. You're going to have to do some sort of research talk with a Q&A, usually presented to the entire department. You're frequently going to be asked to do some kind of teaching demonstration. You will have individual meetings with faculty members where you can actually like one-on-one with the different faculty. You will have meetings with department chairs and deans. You will have lunch and dinner with current faculty members. You will meet with graduate students or undergraduate students. And these are all kind of things like the biggest thing to understand with an on-campus academic interview is that the interview does not stop at any point until you get on the plane. Like the interview is ongoing. So there's some places I see people get tripped up here. Those one-on-one interviews with faculty, sometimes they get too casual, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Sometimes when they're at dinner or lunch, they let loose a little bit too much. Like you are being interviewed the entire time that you are going through this entire process. You need to remain professional and on point for the entire thing. You will have time to prepare for all of this, for pretty much all of this stuff. The research talk, you will have plenty of time in advance to be able to prepare for. Same with the teaching demonstration. Practice those things with your peers, with your mentors. Make sure that you feel comfortable in that space with what you're doing with it. And the meetings with like higher up people, department chairs, deans, that's where it really pays off to know more about the mission of the department, of the university, to understand trends like enrollment, because those meetings are usually about the strategic priorities of the department. And it's really helpful to be able to illustrate your knowledge of those topics so that you can speak intelligibly to like why you're a good choice to fill in the needs that a department is trying to address. So this is an intensive kind of process, but the upside to it, right, is that by the time you get to this point, there's usually only like 3, 4, maybe 5 people they're bringing on campus for an interview at this stage. So they like you at this point, and they're invested in this, and they want you to do well. They're not looking for a reason to trip up for you to trip up. So don't go in there thinking they're trying to catch you. Basically don't self-sabotage yourself in this process.
Yeah, and this is so helpful actually. I think I told some of you before, I'm very open. I'm interested in faculty job and also industry. So I applied to both. I actually got an opportunity for an on-site faculty job interview. And I think I did well for research talk and a meeting with, some whiteboard because I had plenty of opportunity to practice that during my academic program. But what the part is, I was not so comfortable with is actually have lunch or dinner or having a tour. That is a long tour, 45 minutes. What are some of the things I can talk to them? Those are some of the things that we cannot prepare that well just for a few days before the interview. Those are some of the things you can practice now by having lunch with some colleague. Because at that time, you are not only going to talk about business or job, you are going to have a lot of small talks. So learn how to conduct those type of conversations is so important. Now, nowadays I'm more comfortable, but at that time I can remember how awkward it is. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so thanks, Kyle. So now I'm going to talk about during the interview and also after the interview. And Kyle, feel free to comment as well. So I think some of you asked this question in the beginning. During the interview, I'm going to talk about how to manage anxiety and energy, how to create a positive, strong first impression, and how to do effective communication, and how to handle difficult questions. I think there was a questions for that as well. So manage anxiety and energy. This is so important. I'm sure you also have this experience. When you are in the right mode, you feel like you are smarter. For me, as an international student, when I'm in the right mode, I feel like my English is even better. Today, I think I'm in the kind of the average status. I had a long day already. But adjust yourself to be the right mode, to be the best status. And a couple of techniques here. First, you need to do serif preparation, like what we have showed you. This is really the foundation. If you haven't prepared well enough, you will not have the peace and assurance. However, if you really have done your job, you need to tell yourself, I did my best. I have done my homework. I'm just going to enjoy this interview. You are going to have the peace. Second, positive thinking. It's natural to be nervous before an interview, but you also need to understand you are not only being interviewed, you are also interviewing them. And you need to believe you apply to this job. This job definitely aligns with your interest and the skills. If you get the job, you are going to do the job very well. And if you cannot get the job, you need to believe there must be something else out there for you. So have confidence in yourself and have this type of small talk to yourself. Next, body adjustment. Again, you need to learn about yourself. What makes you calm down? For some people, maybe it's deep breathing. For some other people, maybe it's meditation or anything that works for you. For me, it's actually doing jumping jacks. I find it very helpful to boost my energy. I do that whenever I have a very important meeting. So find your own way. How to create a good first impression, the first 90 seconds is so important. It's such a short time, but people already kind of made maybe 50% or more than 50% of decision about you. So you just have to pay attention to it. Punctuality is very basic. I think I don't need to emphasize it too much. So always reserve time, always arrive maybe at least 15 to 30 minutes earlier. Never rush. Have business professional attire. That is also very important. You can dress business formal or business casual. So I know for many of our PhD and postdoc who usually work in office or in labs, we kind of get used to casual clothes. So prepare that from now, because I find myself, I actually, when I was in my PhD, I didn't pay much attention to this. So I remember in my interview day, I really had trouble to find the appropriate clothes. I mean, I have a business casual clothes, but there are not many choices. So pay attention to that. Handshake. This is such a small thing, but it has such a big impact. I have shaked hands with so many people. Many of them is like, just hold the tips, and their hands are so cold, and they are so floppy. And that gives an impression you're not confident. That's the first impression. So what you need to do is really fully grasp your hands. 2 to 3 pumps. Looking at the person you are shaking hands with. Have a gentle smile and start to talk. This plays such an important role. So I want you to spend like 30 seconds here to do a professional handshake with your neighbors, 2 to 3 neighbors. Let us practice this. This sounds silly, but so important. Yay! Remember to do that. And always, no matter where you go, be the first one to offer your hands. Other people will respond. And that small things make a big, big difference. Oh, what? Yeah. And usually it's kind of like mutual. I'll see you, and if I, hold my hands, it will be implied for you to respond back, right? So be the proactive one. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about effective communication. By preparing the interview, I think you will realize the importance of communication. You have done a lot of preparation, but do you know that more than 60% of your communication is actually done not through verbally, but through non-verbally. So how you talk is, at this point, more important than what you talk. Of course, what you talk, very important, like what Kyle mentioned. You need to fully prepare for it. Be brave, be concise, and be to the point. But you also need to pay attention your body language. I mean, now, see, I have a lot of body language, and that is your personality, right? And that you have to practice nowadays. Have eye contact, have gentle smile, and your tone. You don't want to, always hold the same voice warning or tone. Have changes, variations, things like that. And also have good listening skill. You are going to do a lot of talking, but it's also very important to listen what other people say and then respond back, maybe ask a follow-up question. So make the interview like a conversation, a dialogue. It's like playing ping pong. That would be the best interview. Yeah, because in future, when you get hired, you are going to have conversation with your colleagues. So you want to demonstrate your ability to have a conversation during the interview. You don't want to be the one who is always talking, or very silent. Yeah, it's the balance. Handle difficult question. You are going to do a lot of preparation, but no matter how well you prepared, you will encounter unexpected things. You will encounter difficult questions. And at that time, it's okay to say, thank you for that question. That is a great question. Let me think about it. And then pause for about 20, 30 seconds. This is very normal professional to do. And you buy yourself some time to think and come up with an answer. So it's okay to pause. Okay, you missed it. This is to you. It's okay to pause when you have an unexpected question or you don't have an immediate question. You just say, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Let me think about it. And then, after 30 seconds, you come up with your answer. Buy yourself some time to think. And then for a question that you don't have the final answer, you can talk about the part you know, but speculate the part you do not know. Don't just say, I don't know. You may know some part. So it's more important for them to know your thinking process than the final result. Because in our actual work, there will be many times we do not know an answer. But how we think through this question is very important. So you basically describe your thinking process. And there will be some question you absolutely have no idea. And in that case, it's okay to be honest, to say, that's a great question. I really do not know. I haven't thought about that, but I will follow up. I will do some research and follow up with you. And that is okay, decent way to answer. And after that, you will really do some research, follow up with email, and that also shows your qualities, right? Your capabilities. And all those type of tactics is also very, very true for your informal one-to-one meetings or team small group meetings or conference you are attending. So after the interview, I'm going to talk about reflection and how to do follow-up, how to handle rejection and seek feedback. And hopefully we'll get some offer or positive answers and how to negotiate. Reflection. So after each meeting, every day, after each interaction, after the job interview, you are going to spend some time to reflect. What are some of the parts you have been doing well? What are some parts you have not been, doing that well? What should I change? What is my new hypothesis? Next time, maybe I should try this, try that. You have your new hypothesis. And then maybe in the next meeting or next interview, you experiment again. So in this cycle, in this iteration, you are going to grow. And after a couple of meetings and interviews, you are going to be really strong in this process. You know how to handle questions. You know how to communicate with others. I think many of us here are researchers or scientists. We know how to conduct experiment. This is the same thing. Conduct experiment on yourself during the interview preparation process. Follow up. So there are at least 2 to 3 follow-ups you need to do. One is thank you email. This is usually we recommend you to be, do it within 24 hours. Or sometimes if you don't have time to do it within 24 hours, do it as early as you can remember. And this is a place where you can express your gratitude and reiterate your interest. And this is a time where you can share some personalized information about your interaction with the people you are going to write email to. I'm going to give you some kind of template email in the next few slides, but here is just a summary. And then checking email is, for example, if they say, we'll probably let you know the information after 1 hour, then you can follow up after 1 week. Then you can follow up after 1 week. So follow up on a great time or usually 1 to 2 weeks after the interview. Another time you can just inquire the status, kind of re-indicate your interest, things like that. But here just really need to be polite, concise, and professional. And then closure email is if it is like about 2 weeks after the agreed time, you still haven't heard back, you can send another follow-up email. Or if it is 3 to 4 weeks after the interview, you heard nothing, it's very likely they have moved with other candidates, but it's okay, it's good, it's professional to send another follow-up email or kind of close this process. So it's your final inquiry about the status. Again, being positive, show appreciation and being concise. So here are some templates. So thank you for taking the time to meet me. And if possible, you can send this type of thank you thank you letter to each of the interview, but sometimes you cannot get all the information, so you can send to whoever invite you to the interview and ask that person to forward to other people. Thank you for taking this time, blah, 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 blah. And then particularly, maybe it is some question they asked. Maybe it's, some process you have gone through. So cite with some specific things. This type of customization will resonate people and make them more likely to respond to you. And checking email again, I hope you are doing well. I'm writing to follow up on our interview for this job. I remain very enthusiastic about this opportunity. I want to inquire if there is any update. So very concise, professional, and you re-indicate your interest. Close your email. I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to follow up, blah, blah, blah. Since it has been a few weeks and I have not received any update, I want to reach out and inquire the status of the hiring decision. I remain very interested in this opportunity. I would appreciate any updates. Thank you again. And if a decision has been made, I'm grateful. I would be grateful to know the outcomes. Should this opportunity not move forward, I hope to remain in touch. So stay positive. And this is also very, very important. Rejection. Sometimes, if you haven't heard anything, sometimes it happens. And if they send you a rejection letter, it's good for the company to do that. Nowadays, many companies even do not send any rejection letter, and they rejected you but do not inform you. But if you indeed received a rejection letter, this is another kind of connection you can make. You can say, thank you for informing me. While I'm disappointed, I'm still grateful. Being positive, show appreciation. In the interest of my personal growth and improving my future applications, I greatly appreciate any feedback or suggestions. It's very likely they are not going to respond to you, and that's okay. If they reply to you, we should be extremely grateful. There are some people who may want to help you, but typically they will not spend this time. But still, you want to write this type of email because that's another touch point you have with that employer. And if you're really interested in that company, sometimes this small interaction also helps a lot. And I hope our path may cross again, things like that. I want to share one example. Recently, our team organized a bear trek to visit Minneapolis Sigma and McKinsey Consulting Company. And we received 58 applications and we're only able to offer 20 people to go. So we sent offer letter to the first, the top 20 candidates, sent wait list letter to 5 people and the rest of them rejection. And there is one person who was waitlisted follow up with me. There is, and say like if there is any job out, let me know. And indeed, there was a job out. Guess who got the opportunity? The one who contacted me. He is not necessarily being the top one among the 5 waitlisted people, but because he showed interest, we gave him this opportunity. There is also one student who was rejected, followed up with me, and had a coaching appointment with me, asking me how she could improve her application material. Guess what? Now I know her by name. And in future, we're going to offer tracks. If she apply again, do you think I will maybe prioritize her application? Yeah. Of course, she knows now how to apply, how to make her application material stronger also. So those type of small things sometimes make a big difference as well, because behind it is all human. It's all we are doing things. It's human interactions. See, I'm not in my best status. Yeah. Okay, so next slide here is when you receive an offer and what is going to happen. Just very quickly here. Usually you will receive an oral offer. And I would recommend you not accept it on site unless it's like your dream one. Usually what you can say is, thank you so much for this offer. I'm very excited about this opportunity. I need to discuss with my family and get back to you soon. This is a very legitimate, reason and very professional. And that gives you some time to think and do research and potentially negotiate. And then negotiate. Not going to talk about it because our next workshop is about negotiation. It's going to be a full workshop. So I invite you all to join us. It's not only about job negotiation. It's really about communication. Again, similar principles can be applied to your daily interaction with your PI, with your colleagues, things like that. And then you will probably receive once you agree on the, for example, start date, salary, and everything, you will receive a written offer and then accept it, usually within a certain timeline, 24 hours or few days. Submit resignation. Do that. Give at least 2 week notice. This is a professional way to do that. You don't want to leave immediately. 2 week notice is what is expected professionally, and you want to leave well, wrap up your projects well, have good documentation, because at the end of the day, it's a very small world. Your reputation is going to be, known in this small community, and you probably need to reach out to your former employer for recommendation, for connection in future. So leave well. And then is to do the pre-employment screening, drug tests, things like that. And then you are going to be onboarding and start your new job. So I'm going to give back to Kyle to talk about next steps. But is there any quick question here? Any person. Yeah, that's what we recommend. And if you do academic type of interview, it will be easy for you to find their email address. And based on your agenda, who you have met. And maybe, if that name is not on your agenda, you quickly, once you meet that person, quickly write it on your notebook, remember the name, and afterwards follow up with each one of them. Yeah, that's the best thing to do.
It can be a little time consuming, but it's worth it. Yeah.
Because behind it there is an interview panel, hiring committee. Each one of them have the voting power.
Yep. Okay.
One more question here.
Generally discussed.
That
Is it
one,
very-
that one is highly variable. It depends a lot on the person you're talking with. I'll say that like sometimes a selection committee will provide a list of suggested questions or topics that someone might talk about in the one-on-one. Some people will follow that, some people will not. And in my very anecdotal experience, more senior, older professors will throw the script out and want to have a, kind of chat with you, and junior faculty are maybe a little more likely to want to, kind of stick to the script.
Yeah. And at this point, especially with the senior leadership, right? That person should trust your technical fitness and capability at this point. He is more likely to want to make sure, first, you're a nice colleague, you have good personality and everything. Second, you are going to be successful here. So they want to make sure, you have what thing you want, things like that. Yeah. So as Kyle said, there could be many different ways to conduct the one-to-one, and it really depends. But to prepare all of the possible questions, I may suggest to you first talk to people who had done this type of interviews. Second, brainstorm with ChatGPT. There could be many, many related questions that can be asked. But most important thing is have a good conversation, no matter which path they're going to take you, play ping pong with him. Yeah.
Yeah.